Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. So, I'm not gonna BS you. I didn't like Kenobi very much. There were parts that I thought were alright. The finale overall, not bad. I liked the way the character arcs were wrapped up. And of course, I liked the return of the legacy characters, but the show as a whole was a bit of a muddy, dark mess, and I mean that literally. What does that have to do with the potential season 2? Well, a lot. And here's why I think Kenobi season 2 probably will happen more likely than not, and my opinion on whether it's a good thing. Alright, so we have to acknowledge something here. There are a ton of Star Wars actors itching for more involvement in the franchise. Tamara Morrison, he clearly wants to come back as Boba Fett. Ewan, he wants to continue to play Obi-Wan. And I mean, I can't say I blame him. He seems to be having fun, and it certainly doesn't hurt the bank account. Anyway, at a recent panel during LA Comic-Con, McGregor said that Lucasfilm and Disney are currently exploring ideas for a second season of Kenobi. His quote was specifically, "Obviously, between the end of Obi-Wan Kenobi series and when Alec Guinness is Obi-Wan, there's got to be another few stories in there. We're definitely hoping, or well, exploring that, I think would be the word to say." He continued saying that, "I'd quite like to wear that armor. I was speaking to someone earlier from the Clone Wars. I think that's something I would enjoy," and that he really wants to get back together with Hayden. And I mean, for fans, he is pushing all the right buttons, and I think it is that reason more than any other one which hints towards season 2 being made. Lucasfilm so desperately needs a win right now, it's insane. You know, I've been trying to focus on lore on the channel recently. I haven't been doing this game, but things aren't great. The Acolyte, whether you liked it or not, and you're certainly free to have your opinion, from an optics and a financial point of view, was a failure. Ahsoka, and hey, I actually quite liked that show. Not a failure, I'd say, but not a pop culture phenomenon like The Mandalorian, and even that show has seen, I think, declining interest after season 3. Disney does have Andor, which is certainly a critical review darling, but the rumor is that they're also not too confident in Skeleton Crew. That brings us to All Reliable, the Clone Wars and the prequel characters, Kenobi. Kenobi was a rating success despite itself, and I really mean that. I think Kenobi was flawed in so many different ways, primarily ones which thankfully aren't inherent to the idea of a Kenobi show itself. I was a little worried about whether they'd be able to think up a plot which makes sense, and I think they did, and I think the confrontation between Vader and Kenobi made a lot of sense, but there were so many moments which were just badly made. The entire sequence in the Inquisitor base looked awful. There were so many moments where it looked like the characters didn't quite know what to do in the volume, and it looked cheap, and you know how it is. That being said, there's no reason a season 2 would have to continue those errors, nor do I think Kenobi season 1 did enough damage to the idea of more Kenobi on TV that viewers aren't going to turn in again. In fact, Kenobi might be their last reliable idea. I talked about how The Mandalorian has declining interest. I'm actually quite concerned about the movie. I don't think Ahsoka really popped off, even with Thrawn and all the Rebels characters, like people were hoping for. But people will always love the Clone Wars, and another benefit is that Kenobi came out sort of in the middle of Star Wars diving way too deep alongside Marvel into the streaming wars. Another Kenobi show, maybe it's not even Kenobi Season 2, it's a completely different series, will be releasing when it's the only dog on town and should get a lot more budget and hopefully a lot more care. I think that a lot of Disney Star Wars shows would have benefited from that. I think the Book of Boba Fett could have been really spectacular. I mean, I still thought it was okay, even very good at times, but the quantity over quality approach for streaming just did not work, and it did serious harm to the brand. And I think continuing to drop shows which flop makes that even worse. Kenobi is an opportunity to reverse that trend, and shocker, Ewan is right. Fans have reacted extremely well to Hayden's return to Star Wars. People loved his moments in Ahsoka. He was great in the Kenobi series mostly, and I think it's a chance to continue the redemption passion for not really the actor, but the characters. I also think it makes a lot of sense just for where Star Wars is right now from a storytelling perspective. And what I mean by that is it does feel like we've moved on from the Clone Wars as a TV show. Not just the Clone Wars, but also its descendants. Star Wars Rebels, obviously the Bad Batch, even Tales of the Jedi. I think a Kenobi show could represent a good opportunity to continue telling stories in that medium, impactful stories as well, without having to launch another animated show. I can see Kenobi Season 2 or Kenobi Series 2 being large part flashbacks, and I can also see them learning from Andor and treating viewers as, reasonably intelligent beings. Andor's biggest issue is the name, in my opinion. I don't think people were super intrigued in a show named after a character from a movie, which, and I say this, bless its heart, had maybe its one weakness is being characters and the time spent with characters. And then it kind of won people over with the quality, with the slower drama. I can see Kenobi Season 2 benefiting from the Kenobi name to bring viewers in, but then telling a more methodical story, maybe introspective about war, about Anakin's fall, while also dealing with some sort of new conflict in the current day. Current obviously being a completely nonsense word in that context. And I do think it will be Clone Wars based, because you can't have Anakin and Obi-Wan meet again, at least not physically, after their battle in Kenobi Season 1. They can, Snapchat each other in the Force, they can have dreams about each other, and they can have flashbacks. Flashbacks where Anakin is also out of his armor, which I think is what people really want anyway. What's the other half of the show going to be? I mean, that's a really good question, and it's why I'm a little bit upset at the Book of Boba Fett. I think that Star Wars Legends actually had a few really interesting ideas that Kenobi Season 2 could have mined from. Specifically about Tusken Raiders. Kenobi probably can't be leaving Tatooine again, at least not on some grand star-hopping adventure. He needs to spend some time meditating with Qui-Gon, and he needs to find a problem close to home. The Tusken Raiders had perhaps one of the most compelling options for that, Darth Krayt, and Darth Krayt's interesting because he could have tied in to the post-sequels era of Star Wars canon. So in Legends, Darth Krayt was the big bad of the Legacy era of comics. He's an interesting character because he sort of establishes a new form of Sith, the One Sith, but also existed for a long time in Star Wars history. He was born on Tatooine, he lived during the Clone Wars, then, as we learn in the Legacy comic series, would hide from Order 66 among the Tusken Raiders, where he'd eventually have a run-in with, guess who? Kenobi. This storyline would arguably work better now based on not just what we've seen throughout the new Star Wars canon, but even Kenobi Season 1, where we get a hint at the secret Jedi Resistance. Maybe Kenobi initially thinks he's helping until he encounters this Sith, and then that sets up a Darth Krayt-like character, but I think he deserves a lore video all of his own. Maybe after I reread Fate of the Jedi again. But you wouldn't even have to go with the big bad guy, because there are other interesting Tusken Raiders in Star Wars Legends. Remember Tahiri Vela? She was also raised among the Tusken Raiders. Either way, I think there are options, and I think that this is a win that Disney honestly can't afford to pass up right now. Just my opinions, though. Let me know yours, of course, down below.